Dear students and viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to online class of Kishoreganj Government Boys School. This is Muhammad Abul Kashem, Assistant Teacher English. Today I'm going to continue my topic transformation of sentences according to structure, part 2. The class is for the students of class 9 and 10. So let us start the class. In my previous class, I have discussed about 9 rules of transformation of sentences according to structure. Today, I am going to discuss 7 rules of it. So students are told to watch the class carefully, watch the structure of the sentence, examples carefully and attentively. Look at the 10th rule. Subject, eat, eats, that is base form or S form, or ate, past form, and rest of the sentence. So that or in order that subject can base form or could base form. So if the tense of independent clause is in present tense, we have to use can base form. If the tense of independent clause is in past form, we have to use could base form. So look at the complex sentence. It is a complex sentence because it contains so that or in order that. These two conjunctions are subordinating conjunction. That's why it is a complex sentence. So if we want to make it a simple sentence, look at the structure. We have to use the first clause, that is we have to use the independent clause and rest of the sentence, and instead of so that or in order that, we have to use to or in order to, then we have to use base form of the dependent clause, base form of the dependent clause. Then it will be a simple sentence. So if you want to make it a compound sentence, we have to use the first we have to use the independent clause, then the dependent clause, and two clauses will be joined by a coordinating conjunction and, that is instead of so that or in order that, we have to use and if you want to make it a compound sentence. So look at the example. Jamal works hard so that he can succeed in life. It is a complex sentence. So simple will be Jamal works hard to succeed in life. If you want to make it a compound sentence, look at the structure. Jamal works hard and he can succeed in life. So if you want to make it it is a so that is a complex sentence. So that subordinating conjunction, that's why it is a complex sentence. So we have to use, instead of so that, we have to use to base form and rest of the sentence. If you want to make it a compound sentence, instead of so that, we have to use and to make it a compound sentence. Now look at the 11th rule. Subject, base form or S form or past form, rest of the sentence. So adjective or adverb that subject can't base form or couldn't base form, and rest of the sentence. So look at the complex sentence. It is a complex sentence because it contains a subordinating conjunction that, so simple sentence will be subject, base form or S form or past form, that is we have to use the independent clause first and rest of the sentence, and instead of so we have to use to, then we have to use adjective or adverb, and instead of that we have to use to, and then we have to use base form and rest of the sentence. If you want to make it a compound sentence, we have to use very instead of so or great. We have to use very or great instead of so. Then we have to use adjective or adverb and rest of the sentence. Then instead of that we have to use and rest of the sentence. So look at the structure of the compound sentence. We use first the independent clause, then we use the dependent clause, and two clauses are joined by and, a coordinating conjunction. Look at the example. Halal is so weak that he can't take the load. Simple sentence will be Halal is too weak to take the load. If you want to make it a compound, look at the structure. Halal is very weak and he can't take the load. So adjective that. So instead of so we have to use to, weak, adjective weak, and instead of that we have to use to, and then we have to use base form and rest of the sentence to make it a simple sentence. If you want to make it a compound sentence, we have to use very instead of so, and we have to use and instead of that, and rest of the sentence. That is two clauses. He is very weak, he can't take the load. These two clauses will be joined by a coordinating conjunction and, then it will be a compound sentence. Now look at the 12th rule. Subject it, its, base form or S form or past form, rest of the sentence. So adjective adverb that subject can base form or could base form. If the tense is in present tense, we have to use can base form. If the tense is in past form, we have to use could base form. Look at the simple sentence structure of the simple sentence. Subject, base form or S form or past form, that is we have to use the first clause, the independent clause, then instead of so we have to use to, then we have to use adjective or adverb, and instead of that we have to use to, then we have to use the base form of the dependent clause. If you want to make it a compound sentence, instead of so we have to use very or great, adjective or adverb, and instead of that we have to use and rest of the sentence. So if you want to make it a compound sentence, two clauses, the first clause and the second clause. First clause is independent clause, the second clause is dependent clause. Two clauses will be joined by a coordinating conjunction, and then it will be a compound sentence. So look at the example. Joshim was so clever that he could understand it. Simple sentence. Joshim was too clever to understand it. Compound sentence. Joshim was very clever and he could understand it. So instead of so, we use to in simple sentence, adjective, and instead of that we use to, then we use base form and rest of the sentence. And if you want to make it a compound sentence, instead of so we have to use very or great, and instead of that we have to use and rest of the sentence. That is, we have to join two clauses. The independent clause, Joshim was very clever, and the dependent clause, he could understand it. Two clauses will be joined by a coordinating conjunction if you want to make it a compound sentence. Now look at the 13th rule. Subject on and subject to. Look at the rubric. Tense will be present indefinite or past indefinite. So adjective, adverb, that, subject to, can't, base form, or could on, base form. So look at the sentence. The sentence contains so that, it is a subordinating conjunction. So if you want to make it a simple sentence, look at the structure. First clause, that is independent clause, will be the same. Then instead of so you have to use to, adjective or adverb, and then we have to use for, and objective form of subject to, then we have to use to base form, that is full infinitive. If you want to make it a compound sentence, so will be very or great, then we have to use adjective or adverb, and the dependent clause will be joined by and. So two clauses, independent clauses and dependent clauses, will be joined by and if you want to make it a compound sentence. So look at the rubric. So adjective or adverb, that we have to use to, adjective, adverb, for objective form of subject to, and to base form. If you want to make it a compound sentence, we have to join two clauses by and a coordinating conjunction. So look at the example. The tea was so hot that he couldn't drink it. Simple will be the tea was too hot for him to drink. Compound will be the tea was very hot and he could not drink it. So instead of so we use here to, adjective hot, then for, objective form of subject to is here he, objective form is him, to base form, and if you want to make it a compound sentence, two clauses will be joined by and a coordinating conjunction. Look at the 14th rule. Subject 1, verb 1 before subject 2, verb 2. Subject 1, verb 1 before possessive form of subject 2, ing form of verb 2. So look at the sentence first. Before is a subordinating conjunction, that's why it is a complex sentence. So first clause, independent clause, and the second clause is dependent clause. Two clauses are joined here by before. Before is a subordinating conjunction, that's why it is a complex sentence. So if a complex sentence contains before, we have to transform it into simple following this structure, we have to use the independent clause first, then we have to use before, and possessive form of subject to, then we have to use the ing form of verb to, and rest of the sentence. If you want to make it a compound sentence, two clauses will be added by and, joined by and. So we have to use and instead of before if you want to make it a complex sentence, and we have to add ago in the first clause, that is independent clause. Look at the example. Complex sentence: the patient had died before the doctor came. Simple sentence: the patient had died before the doctor's coming. So compound sentence will be: the patient had died ago and the doctor came. So look at the simple sentence. Before, possessive form of subject to. So look at the subject here. Subject to is the doctor. The possessive form of doctor is the doctors, and ing form of verb to is coming. Came. Ing form is coming. And if you want to make it a compound sentence, we have to add ago at the end of the independent clause. Then we have to use and, then rest of the sentence, that is dependent clause. Now look at the 15th rule. Subject on, verb on, and rest of the sentence after, subject to, verb to, and rest of the sentence. The simple will be subject on, verb on, rest of the sentence, that is we have to use the independent clause first, then after possessive form of subject to, ing form of verb to, and rest of the sentence. Then we have to, if you want to make it a compound sentence, we have to add later at the end of the independent clause, and two clauses will be joined by and coordinating conjunction. So if you want to look at the complex sentence, instead of after we have to use and we have to add later at the end of the independent clause, then it will be a compound sentence. So look at the example. Complex sentence: the patient died after the doctor had come. Simple: the patient died after the doctor's coming. Compound will be: the patient died later and the doctor had come. So look at the sentence after, simple sentence after, then we use the possessive form of subject to. Here the subject to is doctor, the possessive form will be the doctors, and the ing form of come is coming. And compound sentence will be to add later at the end of the independent clause. Here the patient died is an independent clause, and then we have to use later, and then two clauses will be joined by and, a coordinating conjunction, and then it will be a compound sentence. Now the 16th rules, it is the last rule of the topic today. So look at the sentence. If this complex sentence contains till or until, then we have to transform it into simple following the structure. We have to use the independent clause first, then till, until, and possessive form of subject to, ing form of verb to, and rest of the sentence. If you want to make it a compound sentence, look at we have to use first the independent clause and rest of the sentence, and at the end of the independent clause we have to use the before the time. We have to add a portion before the time, then two clauses will be joined by and coordinating conjunction. That is, we have to use and, till or until, if you want to make it a compound sentence. So look at the example. Complex sentence, he did not move till or until I returned. Simple sentence will be, he did not move till or until my returning. Compound sentence will be, he did not move before the time and I returned. So if you look at the simple sentence, till until, possessive form of subject 1, subject 2, subject 2, possessive form of subject 2. Here subject 2 is I and possessive form I is mine, and the ing form of return is returning. So if you want to make it a compound sentence, look at the end of the independent clause. We use here before the time, we add here before the time at the end of the independent clause, and then we use the dependent clause, and two clauses are joined by and coordinating conjunction. So then it will be a compound sentence. So students are told to follow the structure properly, carefully, follow the examples carefully, properly, and they are told to follow my first topic, first part, to understand the complex, simple and compound properly. I think the weakness of the students will be removed. So thanks for watching the class. Today is no more. The next topic will be transformation of sentences according to structure, part 3. So stay safe, stay home, stay safe until then. Thank you.